Uh, Hey, Rick, really appreciate you hopping on with me today with the Unconventional Fitness here in Cleveland, Ohio. Guest today is Rik Brown, known as Mr. Mace Man. He is out in California right now. I know he's been traveling a lot, getting ready to do some more traveling, but really excited to have him on the show today to talk about who is Mr. Mace Man and how he got there. But I think, Rick, if you can just start off with, kind of who you are and how you got to become Mr. Mace Man.
Fabulous. I'm a child of the 70s. I'm 60 years, called the Iron Bug, and that working out, I loved it. And at that time, the only resource you had for information was a high school PE coach or what was called the muscle magazines back then. And doing standard bodybuilding style training, I trained as hard as I could, and I just didn't seem to grow like the guys next to me did. I got stronger, and I was better conditioned, but I just didn't look the same. I'm real tall, and I've got big joints, and I've got a big head, and it just makes everything else look small. It's a bodybuilding is a visual sport, and I had a few friends that barely touched a weight, and they looked fantastic. And that frustrated me for about 20 years. And then I found out about strength and conditioning style workouts. This was all before CrossFit, mind you. I found out about training your whole body as a system, heart and lungs being as important as muscle size and shape, even more so. And the thing that changed it for me, CJ, was I found out that anybody who did it and worked hard would improve. It wasn't like bodybuilding where some people didn't try hard and they looked great, and some people tried hard and they looked like trash. If you put in the time, if you put in the workouts, you would make tremendous progress. And I said, I'm in. I'm diving in with everything I have, and that led me to kettlebells. At first, when I learned about kettlebells, we're talking like 2004. I approached them with a bodybuilder's mentality. Okay, what do I do when I'm too strong to lift the heaviest one? And I didn't realize that, among kettlebell people, there's ways around that. It's not just what can you lift for 10 reps or something like that. And I wasn't sure if I was going to make it work and really jump into it, but I went in 2004 to a kettlebell convention in Las Vegas. And wow, I just got enamored with the world. I noticed that these people didn't care that I didn't have 20-inch arms, because they didn't. And they were yet they were incredible physical specimens, both male and female. And they took their training serious. And I thought, just maybe I can do this. And that's an interesting point, because around 2005, 2006, I decided to dive in, CJ. At that time, the only way you could do that in the kettlebell world was to get certified in Minnesota. I'd never been to Minnesota. I went out and got another job so that I would have the money to fly to Minnesota, stay in a hotel, and pay the $1,800 it cost to get certified. And I never, ever, ever felt that I overpaid. I never felt that it was too steep of a price. I left being certified knowing what my career would be, knowing that I was going to influence people with physical fitness and strength and conditioning. And I had a track to run on, and I was off. Of course, that track curved a bit, and I went into clubs, heavy clubs, and I went into the Mace, where I found my real niche. But it all started with that $1,800 investment. And now fast forward to 2018, it seems like people are afraid to pay $99, for something. And I don't know why. They pay $5, $6 for a cup of coffee at Starbucks, and save up your Starbucks money for a month and hire a professional to teach you something that can change your life from then on.
And Rick, I think you hit on a really good point early on. So many people start off in that, I don't want to say bodybuilding, but just looking at the aesthetics. And not realizing that whole system approach that you had talked about. And, there was this whole philosophy before CrossFit, and, CrossFit has done a great job with bringing it to the forefront and getting people training in that way of hitting the different systems. I think it's very frustrating to a lot of people when they go to the gym, they don't see the results. They don't look like these people that we see on the magazines, like you talked about, because we have different body types. How was the kettlebell unconventional, club training? How did that translate and really get you hooked, coming from a world of looking at aesthetics?
Well, it was a skill that you needed to learn. It was not well known. You had to learn it and practice it. You couldn't just lightly, you can't just say, oh, I'm going to get a kettlebell and a week later be good at it. Same with a mace, same with heavy clubs, same with a Bulgarian bag. There takes time to really demonstrate some prowess in it, and you have to be dedicated to it. So that knocks off 80% of the people right off the bat. They'll go back to doing what's fun and easy. I just got hooked on this. I thought, hey, a kettlebell's like a dumbbell, but you could do things with a kettlebell you wouldn't dream of doing with a dumbbell. And with just the addition of that handle and the knowledge of how to use it, you can step into a whole different world that the person who's limited to a dumbbell would never have access to. The extreme levels of conditioning, being able to hold on to the kettlebell when your hand is exhausted, because you can open up your hand and still have that kettlebell stay in place. You wouldn't do that with a dumbbell, you'd lose it. And so I was grateful that right off the bat, CJ, I sought out the highest level of professional instruction I could. I went and got another job so that I could afford it. I didn't just say, well, gee, that's kind of a steep price. I never felt that way. The money I can always recoup, but I want to learn, and I want to learn from the best. And I've been, when I look back now, I've been very fortunate that I've had access to pretty much the top tier trainers in kettlebells, clubs, Bulgarian bag, and the mace. And I'm really grateful for that. I'm not saying that this journey that I've taken couldn't have been done without it, but it's a lot harder when all you have is YouTube. And in fact, YouTube was just in its infancy when I started this.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, you hit a good point where a lot of people think they can go on YouTube, Instagram, and learn something different and unconventional. What advice would you give to somebody who's looking to get into this and just starting out? Can you hear me, Rick?
Bodybuilding. Are we still there?
Yep, I was saying, I think we got disconnected for a second.
All right. Well, I mean, I sucked as a bodybuilder for 20 years, and then fortunately I found something else. And just be willing to learn, be teachable. Don't feel that you know it all, and seek out that high level instruction. That high level instruction in all the modalities I've mentioned are more plentiful and easier to find now than when I started. So if the cost is something that you're worried about, I say good instruction doesn't cost, it pays.
I like that. And as far as kind of elaborating on that, like what do you consider good instruction? When you're looking for somebody starting out in the fitness industry, looking to find a trainer, maybe it's a trainer wanting to learn these unconventional ways, the way of the mace or the way of the clubs. What would you consider to be, good instruction, and how to find that?
Well, I put a post up, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago, and it generated a lot of comments, pro and con. But I said, ask your trainer 3 questions. How long have you been doing this? Who have you trained? And if it's a sport that leads, like GS sport or even the mace, if it's something that leads to a competitive event, have you yourself ever competed at it? Okay, now some sports don't lend themselves to competition, so it's not as important that your instructor has competed. But I would think that if you're going to learn boxing, you want somebody who's been around a while, somebody who's trained a few good boxers, and somebody who's been in the ring with somebody throwing the leather back at them.
Yep. So leads to a really good point. Is they have the experience, right? They've been there, they've thrown the gloves more, they've swung that mace around. And I know you've been around, Rick. You've traveled what, 9 different countries. Done.
Yes, as of now, 9. We're always trying to get more.
So
Yes.
we got to get you to like 12 here this year by the end of 2018, right? Get some more stuff in there.
That is the plan. Yes, that is the plan. But you know what? I love it. I love the travel.
So you have the experience, Rick, right? You've been around, you've taught this. You went from bodybuilding to kettlebells, clubs, maces, and now you are the Mr. Mace Man, right? Like that is what you're known as, is Mr. Mace Man. Can you dive into, I think it'd be really good to just, what are the benefits of training with the mace for people who aren't sure about it or what it is?
Well, that's a good question. The mace, as I teach it, is a strength and conditioning tool that specializes in upper back, shoulder grip strength. Okay. When 5 years ago I had a business coach, the mace wasn't as well known. Maybe it was 6 years ago, and he said, "Rick, you have got to introduce the mace as a total body training tool." And I said, "It isn't." He goes, "It will never be embraced by the public unless it is taught as a total body training tool." And I told him, I said, I gave a mace seminar at an Olympic lifting gym. There were 12 people that attended. 8 of them were women, and the 4 were gentlemen. And the 8 women all were 400-pound squatters. I wasn't going to stand in front of them with a 15-pound mace, and I wasn't going to tell them and insult their intelligence and tell them that if they do a lunge or a twist or something, a pirouette with this 15-pound bar, they're going to reach the deepest fibers of their quads. They already had 28, 30-inch quads. You see, I said, I'm going to show you what the mace does that you can't do, you can't replicate with anything else. Yes, of course you can squat with a mace. Of course you can do lunges with it. And there's a whole school of mace trainers, good ones, that teach that. But they teach the mace as a movement-based tool. I teach it as a strength and conditioning tool. I'm not saying that mine is better. It is just different.
So what is the difference between, the movement that you talked about where they're teaching the lunges and the squats versus the strength and conditioning, just on that high level? What is the difference that we could see in the training?
The size of the mace, for one.
I've seen some of the maces to train with.
People don't lunge with a 60-pound mace. At least I don't know too many that do. And so they're generally the movement or the flow group, and some of them are tremendous athletes, particularly the teachers of it. They're tremendous athletes. They generally use a smaller sized mace. Movement is the goal. And lately, and I'm okay with that, it's not what I do, but lately I've seen a number of them put their hand on the other end of the mace. They're holding the ball end of the mace, and that completely negates the leverage effect of the mace, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. Okay, I don't want the mace to be turned into a, how do I say this? And I know I'm going to offend people. I don't mean to, but they make it like rhythmic gymnastics, which, I know they give gold medals out for that, but that's just not what I went to a gym for in 1973. When I first went to a gym, I heard clanging of big, heavy plates, and I said, yeah, I want to be big and strong. And I'm still chasing that.
So there's, from what I'm seeing and hearing, is there's the opportunity to get big and strong with the mace, and then there's the movement, which is going to be more of the lighter mace, and the flow, which is a different foundation than what you have. I think we've all kind of talked about, how do we support each other with the mace, and I know you have a lot of really awesome stuff coming up, and kind of just curious as far as, seeing those two merge. How do you see those two coinciding together?
Okay, really good question. And when I first started seeing it and noticing the difference, I thought, wow, some of these guys are really great athletes. Some of these guys and ladies are really great athletes, and they do really eye-catchy stuff. And let's say they get on TV and get interviewed, and the general public's going to think, okay, this is the Mace. And then they see someone who's been to one of my seminars come along swinging a 50-pound mace, and they're going to go, wait, that's not the Mace. He didn't, he just swung it once or twice. He didn't do anything else. But it's a different goal. And with that in mind, I might have said some disparaging things a couple of years ago, and I've recanted those or retracted them, because the way I look at it, if you pick up the Mace for any purpose, whether it's movement and flow or whether it's strength and conditioning, you're getting off the couch, and we're all winners that way. So with that in mind, CJ, I picked up the phone and I called the number one flow guy that I knew, that I'd seen on the internet, and I said, hey, look, you're number one in what you do. I'm pretty good at what I do. Why don't we get together and do something? Why don't we just get together and do something? And October 13th and 14th, it's going to be the Mace Unity Dual Certification. The trainers that go there, and it's open to anybody, but generally trainers have signed up so far. In 2 days, they'll get a certification in state-of-the-art flow, steel mace flow by Leo Urquidez. I mean, you don't get better than that. And if they survive that, the next day they get a certification with Mr. Mace Man.
They may have tired legs before they get to you, but that's
we're expecting. Leo may take them out. I don't know.
I don't think he'll go easy on him. Save a little bit. He'll take their legs out before they get to you, so they can still swing the mace.
Well, that's good. There's a big portion of my training which is done seated and on our knees, because I believe that's a very vital way to train the mace. I've received an incredible amount of criticism from that online when I posted videos of me training people in Ireland, and what most of the critics didn't know, that the people I was training were gold medal winners in themselves in GS sport and in martial arts. But they came to my seminar, they advanced their skills. They're leading the way in Ireland right now. And they started saying, no, these people should be standing up. It's ridiculous. And before I could even make a comment, I was debating what comment to make. Some of my students they said, well, you're telling these people to stand on their feet. Would you encourage Rik's wheelchair-bound students to stand up? Or the students that Rik has taught that have no legs? Because I have a few students with one leg or no legs, and some that are wheelchair bound. They can't stand up. I had to learn to train them where they were. But I found that a seated 10 to 2 and 360 with 1 and 2 hands offers great benefit to those of us who can walk.
That's really encouraging just to hear you say, you've had students who've been wheelchair bound, or don't have legs or one leg, and found a way to teach them. And it sounds like you found a way to make it inclusive to everybody with swinging the mace to the traditional style that you do. Kind of leading into that, who is this mace for? Who is it for?
It's for somebody who wants to pick up something with their hands and get moving and learn a skill and a technique that not only gives them a great sense of accomplishment, but it feels good to do it. The mace feels good. Of course, it's going to tire you out, but the circular rotational action kind of feels like a massage on your trapezius when you've done high reps. And lets out a lot of aggressions too when you swing a decent sized mace.
That's perfect. It being able to be for everybody, and the benefits of the circular motion. Can you kind of dive into that? Because that's something that you don't get with a lot of other fitness equipment, is that rotational training and circular movement of a piece of equipment.
Yeah, the traditional training, linear, pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. a constant pressure and grinding on your joints. Whereas with a circular stress, that the weight is being swung away from the joint, the joint being the axis. I'm not a physics master, but I've swung the mace enough to know that there's a compression and then an elongation of the joint with a lot of the moves. And to me, it's like a full circle. Yeah, it is full circle. But I mean, it stresses, it compresses, and it stretches in one complete movement. And that feels fabulous. That feels like I want to do more and more of it. Again, you've got a relatively lightweight. I weigh about 240 pounds, and a 40-pound mace is considerable. A 50-pound mace is a challenge, and that's a small percentage of my body weight. And yet, because it's at the end of 3 feet or 4 feet, I even have a couple of 6 and 7 feet maces. Very little weight is actually needed to get a great training effect.
So you're saying 40, 50 pounds is a pretty heavy weight there, which, most people may not hear that.
For me, it is.
Right? I mean,
for me, it's heavy. I'll admit it.
And the heaviest I've messed around with has been a 40-pound mace, and it's a totally different feel, right? Versus a 40-pound dumbbell. And I think, when you start talking about training, it doesn't need to be a super heavy, right? In quotation marks, heavy, where people think it needs to be 200, 300 pounds to get elicit a response. That 40 pounds can really make you work. But where would you recommend somebody new to the mace starting weight-wise?
I started, I was always a good sized guy and in good shape, but I started with, at the time I started, 2006, I think, the only size mace you could get was 10 kilograms, 22 pounds. So I would say for most men, 20 pounds, for most females, 10 pounds.
And how long would you recommend, as you're going through the training cycle, to stay at a weight before you find another weight and jump up? Because I see this in, the CrossFit world, the weightlifting world, where people start to do it and they want to jump up right away. But how would you safely recommend that?
Okay, safely is the key point. Listen, I'll tell you right now, you give me a 25 to 30-year-old male in good shape who's never lifted a mace, I'd start him with a 20-pounder. If I wanted to, I could train his muscles. Now listen, I could train his muscles to be able to handle a 50-pound mace in 3 to 4 months. Muscles. But the mace trains more than muscles. It trains ligaments and joints, and they grow and strengthen much, much slower. You know that 22-pound, that 10-kilogram mace that I started with? I stayed with, now I'm not recommending this, but I stayed with that weight for almost 8 years. I would say that you should, rather than time, when you can safely do whatever weight you start with for 100 repetitions, then you can bump it up a notch.
And when you go to bump it up a notch, what do you recommend the jumps be with the mace?
As light a jump as you can. I mean, like if you go from a 10 to a 15 pound, a 15 to a 20 pound, the mindset is different from powerlifting or weightlifting or something that, if I can deadlift 300 pounds 5 times, maybe I can do 330 one time or something. It's not always that chase for heavy weights. You want to use well the particular weight you have.
That's a good. So it's a change of a mindset is what it sounds like too for somebody.
It's a tremendous change of a mindset, because you're not going to really impress somebody when they find out how much is that thing you're lifting. You say it's 25 pounds. In their mind, they think a 25-pound dumbbell, and it's almost meaningless to them. Then you hand it to them, and they can't do a thing with it. So,
they realize how things change when you add a longer arm or lever to a weight.
Absolutely, it does.
Is there another way that you can change the feel of a mace besides just adding weight to it?
Okay, I'd say that the two ways you do it, you increase the load, which is the size of the weight at the end, or you could increase the torque by having a longer handle. So if you get a mace and the particular mace you buy is just too long and too heavy, choke up on it. It'll be a lot more usable for you. And then instead of adding weight, just extend the length of the handle and where you grip it all the way at the end. And again, when you can grip it all the way at the end and go safely for 100 reps, you're ready to go. There are a few companies, very few, that have water fillable maces. I have a couple of them. And 20 pounds of solid iron and 20 pounds of sloshing water are two completely different animals, completely different. I wish when I saw you in San Diego, I would have brought one of the water fillable ones so you could have given it a try. But it is humbling incredibly.
So that is one of the things I really want to try. It is the water fillable mace, because I have some solid maces at home and at my gym. What is the difference between the ones that are filled with water, sand, and then the solid ones?
Well, sand would be like the middle between water fillable and solid. Sand would be what I call somewhat solid, whereas water doesn't stop moving. And just because you stop the mace, it still wants to move, and it's like a wave in the ocean. It's sloshing around there, and it's not impossible to learn. You learn it rather quickly. So if you're comfortable with a 20-pound mace and you get a 20-pound water fillable mace, you're gonna have it down in about a week. It's not like it's 6 months of training. You're not back at square zero. It's kind of like you know, getting used to driving on the other side of the road. You know, the first time I went to Europe, I kept on turning down the wrong ways on streets because, you know, I just drove all my life in the U.S. and I had to learn a new way. You know, so it's about like that.
so you're learning a whole new way there, it sounds like.
It's not that hard. If you're good with a mace, you'll be good with a water fillable mace in about a week.
So start with a solid mace, add a little length, a little weight, and then you can also start playing around with water. So there's a lot of different ways that you can really change the experience of your mace in mace training.
There are, and there's you know, come on, the mace is a pretty simple thing. It's a stick and a stone. But recently I had a company make a mace for me, and I noticed that its dimensions were somewhat different from what I was used to. And it felt totally different. And since I've had that mace for a week, my mind has been going crazy about, wow, maybe I can add a few little touches to a mace that would be good for a mace for a teaching tool. When I see you next, I'll explain it in greater detail. But I've got some ideas. But for the average person, start with the lowest cost mace you can find. See if this is for you. It's not a tremendous investment. Maces are not particularly expensive. I got 3 daughters. One of them's a golfer. I bought her a set of clubs. Golf clubs are expensive. Okay, maces are not expensive. Even some of the better ones that I have, or the more ornate ones, they're nothing compared to my daughter's clubs.
Yeah, those golf clubs can be a little bit expensive, and the golfing habit is also expensive as well. So I don't think you have to worry about that.
The mace is my golf. I live in a country club, okay, and there's a golf course right next door to me, and that's why a lot of the posts I put on Instagram say to a Mission Viejo Country Club. But hey, I'm not a member of any country club. I just live here, and I couldn't golf to save my life. But there are 3 gyms on the compound, and I do swing a mace in all 3 of them. And people here know what a mace is.
That's awesome. They know Mr. Mace, man. They see you out at the gyms, and they got the best teacher to teach them there. So with being,
Well,
oh, go ahead, Rick.
No, I like to slowly, how the mace is slowly winning people over. You would not believe the ridicule that I endured, and all the listeners out there who are into unconventional training. If you've tried to take a Bulgarian bag to a gym, if you've tried to take kettlebells years ago to a gym, you know what I'm talking about. The ridicule, the jokes, but we survived, and now some of those people are coming to us.
and we're starting to see people open up their minds. And with that, Rik, I kind of want to just highlight and just kind of sum up a little bit. But for somebody getting started, right, with their fitness journey, what advice would you give to somebody starting out on their fitness journey, whether they've been sedentary for the last 10 years or never even touched any type of training implement?
Well, I would obviously, the responsible answer from a trainer is check with your physician. But having done that, go to a licensed, certified personal trainer and tell him your desire that you want to get into shape. If it's with unconventional training, well, you're doing a lot to expose people to unconventional training. Um, Try to get a taste of the different things: a kettlebell, a mace, a Bulgarian bag, clubs. You know, I'm Mr. Mace Man, right? I love the mace. It's my passion and my lust for the last dozen years. But the first thing I tell people at all of my seminars is, if you only have money for one piece of equipment, for goodness sake, buy a kettlebell. One kettlebell can train your whole body. One kettlebell, I can show you dozens of things to do with a kettlebell that could blow away most of the things a whole gym has. Then you might decide, I want to fine tune it and go into a mace or a set of heavy clubs or something like that. But always tiptoe in first. Don't dive in, because if you dive in and it's not for you, that's the quickest way to get lost and to leave. And that won't work. That doesn't do anyone any good.
That's something I see all the time at, in gyms and just owning a gym and being in the industry for a while, is people dive in and they go too hard too fast and they burn themselves out, or they find it's not really for them, and they disappear and they never really achieve the goal and mission they had set out on. And I think we all hit those moments where we have our challenges and that kind of stuff in life and training. What do what do you tell somebody who's struggling in their training?
I didn't catch the last part. What do I tell?
Yeah, what advice would
Say
you
that again, please.
oops, sorry. What advice would you give to somebody who's struggling and has started their training and is struggling to stick with it?
I've got some advice that I don't hear too often, but it seems to have worked for me. I would say scale back. Um, don't try to do everything. And at first, do not really worry about the efficacy of your training. The most important thing a person should develop in the first year of training is the habit of training. Get used to the drive to the gym, get used to the changing your clothes, get used to the calluses you're going to get on your hands, get used to those things. Don't dive in and say, have I lost weight and it's been 3 weeks? Have I gotten stronger? Have I done this? No, just get the habit of always working out. And then if you've developed the habit and you're going to work out consistently, then we can start to tweak a few things to make the efficacy show up. When we were kids and we started going to school, the first thing we developed was the habit of going to school every day. You went from nothing to 5 days a week, and you really didn't start learning until you were in second or third grade.
That's some really good advice, Rik. I've never heard somebody put it that way, as far as just develop the habit of going to the gym. And it's so true. I have my
I've heard, CJ, it's because I've heard people tell me for years, and some of them good friends of mine, Rik, what is the best thing to do? What is the most effective, the hardest core? What is this? The best thing to do is what you will do. What you will do and do continuously. My mother-in-law lived to be 94, and her workout was working in her garden and fishing. Now, no trainer of any merit is going to recommend that that's your fitness routine, but it brought her to 94 because she did it every day. She worked in her garden every day. She danced every weekend, and she was fishing almost every day. So it's what you will do, what you will enjoy. There's more intense workouts than the mace. but I enjoy the mace. And if somebody came to me today and said, I've got a book here that explains that we can scientifically prove that there's a more effective way to train your shoulders, your grip, your back, and okay, fine. I'm still going to do the mace. I do the mace because I like it.
So, you hit the spot right on there with, your mother, 94, doing the things that she enjoyed to be active. And if somebody came to you and said, hey, well, the mace isn't the most, you know, effective tool there is, you'd still do it. Why would you still do the mace? What keeps you going back to it?
Because I like the mace. I like the way it feels. I like the fact that it's a measure of skill with a measure of strength. It's it's power and control. It's not just raw power. It's control, and it's smooth, and it just uh, it's just cool. I like it. I don't have to. I mean, I know all the things to say, like how it develops your rhomboids and scapular retractors and sternomastoid and all that. Yeah, I know all that. But listen, I like it. I pick it up, I swing it. It looks good, and I can do it, and I can teach it, and I do it because I like it. Nobody goes up to a golfer and says, "What does it develop? What does your golf swing develop?" Have you noticed the scapular retractors work harder on one side because you have a staggered stance? Nobody says that to a golfer. Golfer loves golfing, and I'm a mace guy, and I love the mace.
That's so true. You don't go up to an athlete and say, "Why do you like this? Why do you like football? Why do you like golf?" They do it because they enjoy it. It's what clears their mind. It's what they can do to relieve their stress. And I think so many people think fitness has to be a punishment, or you have to not enjoy it, where you can actually enjoy what you're doing. And that's my whole purpose of this, Rick, is to introduce people to different ways of training that I have found and other people such as yourself have found and would still do even if it wasn't the most effective way of training. And there's always going to be different types of tools that come out, right? But what can you do to stay consistent so you can see those long-term effects to live to 94 and enjoy your life all the way up till then?
Well, you would want to pick something that uh, you can do on into old age. And I just turned 60 a couple of weeks ago, and I always try to train in my mind, or ever since I was 30, I always trained for the next 10 years. When I was 30, I always held myself to, how good do I want to be at 40? And so now I'm training, how good do I want to be at 70? Because I hope I make it. And I don't have to kill myself. Like you said, you can enjoy your training. And let me tell you this, you're a young man, at least in my book. You walk into a gym and you start working out and people are judging you. They're judging you. They are judging you left and right. Well, his arms are pretty big and that's a lot of weight he's got on the bar and stuff like that. Let me tell you something. Once you get 60, you just show up at the gym. It's, oh, hello, sir. How you doing? They're just happy. They can't believe you're there because you're their grandfather's age and he's not going to the gym. And so the expectations on you are a lot less, and the respect for having the habit of working out, it's much more admirable on the gray hair and no hair group. um, uh, it really is. There's a scripture in the Bible that says the glory of young men is their strength and the splendor of old men is their gray-headedness. And I don't think that the Bible writer was talking about guys in the gym, but when you see some old guys in the gym, just congratulate them. Doesn't matter. If I hear that a guy's 83 and he's lifting weights, do you think I ask what size, what's on the bar?
No.
Hey, he made it. He got up today. He got up. Doesn't matter what size. Doesn't matter if it's an empty bar. He's a winner. He is a winner. 90% of the people he went to high school with are dead, buried, and gone and forgotten. And so with that in mind, as the answer to your question, pick a fitness activity that you can do when you're 70 or 80, and you can swing a mace when you're 80. You can. It's not going to be a big 60 pounder, I don't think, but it's going to be a mace, and it'll still feel good, and you'll still get benefit from it.
So, Rick, there's so much I want to dive into, and I think we're definitely gonna have to connect again because I want to get into your philosophies of training and how you train and how you train with your group online and all that. So we'll definitely have to get you on here again to talk more about this methodology.
Fabulous. I'd love to.
But before I let you go,
I would love to do that.
sorry.
Let me just say one thing. Talk about. I did a local seminar, and I preached and preached and preached my philosophy on MACE for strength and conditioning. And I had a young guy there, and when it was all done, he said, "I really liked your seminar. I really liked what it did. I thought it was. I'm glad I came here, but I think that the flow style is more for me." I said, "Hey, I still, I succeeded. I I got you to love the mace. You don't love it the same way I do, but you love the mace, and go with my blessings, you know."
And I think to kind of tie that, you can do two different styles of mace. You can do one style, but I think we're all in this together. We're trying to grow the mace community. Coming from my, background with USAW in the CrossFit world, seeing what CrossFit has done for the USAW community and how quickly that grew because it got eyes on that product. I think your journey is going to be another 10 more countries here and just traveling all over because there's so much to learn from you. And to your point, when I see those guys that are 80 at the gym, there's so much to learn from them because they've had so much experience. And I think that's one thing that a good trainer, to your point, brings is that experience. And with that, I know you mentioned you do have a seminar coming up with Leo out in Long Beach, October 13th and 14th, the dual cert. Where else can people find you, Rik? Because I know there's more stuff you got going on.
Yeah, I don't know if this will be put out in time, but today's Monday, and Saturday I will be in Sacramento. Last week I was in Wisconsin. I'll be in Sacramento, and then November 3rd in Austin, Texas at Morph Fitness. I'm really excited about that one. It's going to be a certification in Austin, Texas, November 3rd. I've got a few other big things on the horizon, but I don't want to mention them yet. Believe me, because I'm only 90% sure about them.
Okay.
But if they come through, believe me, they're bigger than anything I've ever done.
Well, I'm so excited, Rik. I can't wait to hear what those announcements are going to be, and I'm going to make sure I keep my eye out on them. And I'm hoping to make it out to Long Beach myself to attend this seminar that you guys have going
Oh,
on.
I hope so.
Um,
Do you know that already people from Canada, a few people from Canada have already secured their position, and all the people that I know that are coming are pretty much high level trainers themselves. I mean, it's not that it's not going to be open to anybody, but the trainers are smart because they realize, some of them wanted to follow Leo, some of them wanted to follow me, and they don't have to follow anyone. They can go and learn from both, and then they can start their own clan, and people will follow them.
Well, I think we're all together, and I think we're seeing the unity and some really good stuff coming along, Rik. So, last question I have, a rapid fire question for you. If I were to plug in
Okay.
your iPhone or turn on your CD player, what do you have playing right now?
Miles Davis, Kind of Blue.
All right. So, um, I appreciate your time, Rik. I know you're a very busy man, and a lot of people are trying to talk with you and train with you. So thank you for your time, and look forward to seeing what you have coming out here in the future.
Thank you so much. Anytime you want me on, I'll be here.
Awesome, Rik.